Just over a year later, the Mormons were forced to leave the area, and eventually the entire state of Missouri, where the temple was prophesied to be built. 38 years after the prophecy was given, as Joseph Smith's generation was coming to a close, the Mormon apostle Orson Pratt had not yet given up hope in his prophet when he preached. The Latter-day Saints just as much expect to receive a fulfillment of that promise during the generation that was in existence in 1832 as they expect that the sun will rise and set tomorrow. Why? Because God cannot lie. He will fulfill all his promises. As a follower of Joseph Smith, Paul Trask moved his family to Independence, Missouri, but he lost faith in Joseph Smith as a prophet through failed prophecies like this one.
Joseph Smith prophesied in the Doctrine and Covenants that the temple here in Independence would be built in this generation as a sign to the people, which prophecy never came to pass. We could go and take a look at the temple lot today and see that it's a completely bare piece of ground with nothing but grass growing on it. And we're certainly very far removed from the 1830s when that prophecy was given. So certainly this is, has to go be counted as one of many failed prophecies by Joseph Smith.
Do you know of any prophecies that Joseph Smith himself gave that failed?
Yeah, I do.
Jesus also prophesied about the temple that stood in Jerusalem in his day. His disciples remarked about the massive stones and magnificent buildings that were on top of the Temple Mount. "Do you see all these great buildings?" replied Jesus. "Not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down." Jesus is specifically predicting about the buildings, that they would be so thoroughly demolished that not one stone would remain on top of another. Not only this, but all these stones would be thrown down off the Temple Mount platform. Is there any archaeological evidence for the prophecy of Jesus and the destruction of the temple that there wouldn't be one stone on top of another?
This is the evidence. This is the evidence. Look at it. It speaks for itself. There is evidence in front of our eyes to the prophecy that came through.
Jesus talks about the stones being cast down, and what he's talking about is they would be cast down from the destruction of the buildings off of the platform onto the ground here.
Here you have it.
When they were cast down and it struck this this road that we're sitting on, this street, what would have
Just
been the
look at
impact?
it. If you look at it, there are certain places like here and over there where there are depressions. This is from the pressure, enormous pressure of these gigantic stone blocks, each of them several tons in weight. Now the 9th of Av, of Tisha B'Av in Hebrew, is traditionally thought to be the date of the destruction of the temple, and on that day laments are said for the destruction of Jerusalem, and on the eve and the morning of that day they read the Book of Lamentations. And you may see even people sitting and crying. This is is an event which took place almost 2,000 years ago, and they still feel it as if it was yesterday. Looking at the stones, I can hear the voice of the sound of the stones collapsing and breaking the slabs of the street. I can hear the people around shouting. I can hear the hussing of the flames around. So with a little bit of imagination, those stones can become even more talkative than they are. Not a single building of Jerusalem was left, and not a stone upon a stone of the temple remained.
Jesus' prophecy that the Jewish temple in Jerusalem would be destroyed took place in history, while Joseph Smith's prediction that the Mormon temple would be built in Missouri did not. So Joseph Smith fails the test of a prophet. Is there any way to look at this other than that he fails the test of Deuteronomy 18?
When you apply the scripture verbatim, then it paints a sorry picture of Joseph.
So what does Deuteronomy say your responsibility is? Because it's not written to. It's written to the one who's reading it, obviously, and there's a responsibility to that if what a prophet proclaims in the name of the Lord does not take place or come true, that is a message the Lord has not spoken. And it says what you're to do with that person. He must be put to death.
Oh.
And what is that responsibility that God is giving in response to the prophet that's found a false prophet? Who's got the responsibility to put that prophet to death?
Well, the people. God's not going to strike him dead.
Yeah, it's to the people who have come to realize that this person has failed this test of a prophet.
Right.
Therefore, it's the people's responsibility to put him to death, right? And so in context to Joseph Smith, we remember that death means separation. So what it means from a spiritual standpoint, a biblical standpoint, to put Joseph Smith to death is to separate ourselves from him and his writings and his church. And that responsibility God has given to the one who sees that he fails the test. So you're saying that he's failed the test, but you don't want to put him to death.
I don't know what to believe anymore. Sometimes I totally see what you're talking about, and it's...
I have no fear of Joseph Smith whatsoever. Because again, Deuteronomy 18 says, if a prophet fails a test, do not be afraid of him. I'm not afraid of Joseph Smith. I'm not afraid of being condemned to hell. Because I don't believe that he is a true prophet, because he fails a test of a prophet. And therefore I can walk in freedom without having to fear what the Book of Mormon says about me, what it says about the Bible that I believe in, and so on and so forth. This is what I believe. I believe in this alone, and I don't believe that it's foolish to do so. This I have a problem with because there's so many contradictions between this and this, that to believe in all of that logically doesn't work. Then you have to, honestly, you have to add this to the mix too, because that's a work of justice.